Last week, after finishing the 52nd episode in 14 months, I got a lot of emails and messages asking what was next for Bible Fiber. Before I answer that question, and I will, I want to thank all of you for joining me in this Bible reading challenge. I was talking to a friend from church who is also a listener, and she said it was like being in a Bible study with me, but one where I got to do all the talking. I'm keenly aware that I was hogging the mic in this virtual Bible study, and I apologize for that part. But I loved all the feedback and messages from listeners about what God was showing them in the prophets. When I first started the podcast, I explained that I wanted to commit my organization to teaching the lesser-known parts of the Hebrew Scriptures and working through them as a community. But I never actually explained the more personal reason why I ventured into the world of podcasting the biblical prophets. Like many of you, my life always involves spinning several plates at once. I'm married to an active-duty Air Force man, and we move states almost every 2 years. In fact, I've lived in 2 states while doing the Bible Fiber series. I have 4 children, and therefore I'm the executive assistant to 4 potential faith leaders, burgeoning scholars, and ambitious athletes. I'm president of the Jerusalem Connection, and I'm a graduate student studying biblical history and archaeology at the slow rate of 1 class a semester. With those spinning plates in mind, it's hard to explain why I chose the year of my husband's year-long deployment to the Middle East to launch a project that required me to read, write, and produce via podcast a commentary essay each week on the minor prophets. He deployed in June 2021, and the podcast started the next month. We are all wired differently, and in my case, I knew that if I started watching YouTube videos of soldiers returning home to surprise their kids at track meets, I would fall into quick depression. I also knew that my best antidepressant would be spending every extra minute of the deployment year reading the Bible. After a hard first summer of solo parenting, I recalled how in the 2009 movie Julie and Julia, a New Yorker writer challenged herself to cook all 524 recipes in Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking in 365 days. In Julie's case, she was distracting herself from her monotonous dead-end job and finding purpose in the art of culinary creation. In my case, I was distracting myself from the monotony of long parenting days without my soulmate and parenting co-pilot. One woman's French cooking is another woman's Bible commentaries. What began as a psychological tool for deployment survival flowered into a life-changing and faith-forming love of the minor prophets, a part of the Bible that I had long neglected. On the very last day of writing, for the very last verses on the prophet Malachi, just 2 weeks ago, I felt jubilant that we had come so far and also spirit-struck by how the last prophet beautifully opened the door for the New Testament. Apparently, I was so excited to get started writing that morning, knowing I was closing out this mammoth project, that I left my car running in the garage after I dropped off the kids at school in the morning. I've never done that before, but apparently when I pulled into the garage, I absent-mindedly left the keys in the ignition and the car running. I read and wrote for 6 hours straight, never aware that the car was still running in the garage until all my smoke alarms started going off. I was tempted to ignore them until I finished the last few paragraphs of the Malachi epilogue episode, but I noticed that the alarms were not going off in the way that they do if there is just a dead battery. The beep was different. Google said 3 beeps and a pause means get out of the house and call the fire department. So that's what I did. By the time the firefighters arrived, the exhaust smell was penetrating the whole house. I embarrassingly admitted that I had no clue about the running car in the garage, even though I was working in my home office right next to the attached garage. They immediately put me on a monitor to test my level of carbon monoxide. Even after being outside in the fresh air waiting for the fire truck, my level was still considered dangerous. And yet I had 0 symptoms the entire day. The firefighters stayed with me until the house was properly aired out and I came down to safe carbon monoxide levels. Thankfully, everything was all right in the end, and praise God for knowledgeable civil servants. I tell you this story because it's the best way to show how absorbed I am in the process of studying and writing about the prophets, eager to share everything I learned along the way. Somehow, the Bible's vibrancy clouded my perception, so I didn't even notice when my body was going toxic. Also, if you detect extra exuberance in that last Malachi episode, I assure you it was genuine and not just the result of carbon monoxide on the brain. Now, what is next for Bible Fiber? In the course of reading the last 3 prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, we have heavily relied on Ezra and Nehemiah for the historic backdrop of the Persian period in Judah. I feel like Ezra and Nehemiah deserve their own study series, not just for what they can tell us about the prophets contemporary to them, but what the 2 reformers were trying to accomplish in the restored community. After Ezra and Nehemiah, the main request I've gotten from people wanting to study the tough prophetic text is a series on Ezekiel. Ezekiel is a big apple and will need to be digested slowly, but I think we're up for the task. In summary, Bible Fiber is going to expand. The tagline for the last year has been exploring the prophetic tapestry of the 12 minor prophets. Now, our tagline is exploring the prophetic tapestry of the 12 minor prophets, 2 reformers, and 1 exile. So please stay tuned. We are continuing.